Welcome back. I hope everyone enjoyed their break as we enter the back half of the first day of summer camp. For those that are just joining us, my name is Jake Rutka, and on behalf of everyone at Top Hat, we're glad to have you with us. Before I introduce the speakers in our next session, I want to draw your attention to the chat function in this webinar. Please use it to share your learnings, experiences, and any resources you found helpful with your fellow educators. And if you have a question, you can use the Q&A feature to raise it to our illustrious keynote presenter. We'll make sure to get to as many of these as we can. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. To get things started, I'd like to welcome back to the virtual stage our host for the next session, Top Hat's Chief Academic Officer, Brad Cohen. Brad, please take it away.
Thanks, Jake. Well, hello again, everyone, or hello to those of you who just joined us. I am looking forward to this next hour where we are going to really focus on how you can leverage those first moments, that first day, to create a more welcoming and inclusive start to the semester. I think it's safe to say that those first few days of class, your students are going to form what is a lasting impression, not just of you as an instructor, but of the course itself. This can have a significant impact on their attitudes towards learning, the relationship they will have with you and their peers, and their willingness to engage in the learning process itself. So the early days of a course are pretty important. Now, my early semesters as an instructor, I recall with no small degree of cringe, the way I welcomed my students and then dove straight into the syllabus to discuss what we would cover, the reading list, and of course, due dates for assignments and exams. In looking back, I know I missed opportunities to ensure that my students felt welcome and included, that they felt excited and motivated to participate, rather than daunted by all the work in front of them. So how can we frame those first few classes to create a welcoming, inclusive tone? How can we drive accountability while exciting students about the journey ahead? And how can we keep the positive energy flowing with assignments and activities that students actually want to complete? Well, I'm happy to say that we're going to try to answer those and other questions with a phenomenal guest speaker. Our guest speaker has led change and innovation at Stanford, Georgetown University, and most recently is the founder of the Bowen Innovation Group. His pioneering work in classroom design and technology has been profiled in the New York Times, Forbes, NPR, and many more. He is also the author of several books, including Teaching Change, How to Develop Independent Thinkers Using Relationships, Resilience, and Reflection. He's also been a featured keynote speaker at our Top Hat Engage faculty conference and past webinars. And we have received such rave reviews, we had to bring him back. I am delighted to welcome again Dr. José Antonio Bowen. Jose, it's wonderful to have you with us today.
Well, hi, Brad. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that you signed up for today's 16-hour seminar. No, just kidding. Yeah, so we're going to talk about early days, sort of how to get yourself ready for a new semester because you're going to need it. All right, so let's start with just two preliminaries. First of all, I mean, I think this is obvious, but it's worth remembering. Our brains are not computers, right? Content is not enough. As Brad has just said, students start with relationships and who do I want to trust? Who cares about me? And so that's why this is so important. I also think that it's worth stating that right, well, this isn't a session on inclusive teaching. All good teaching is inclusive teaching. And so these two things are always going to overlap. And so I'm going to try and talk a little bit about each of these four things. These are my 4 pillars of inclusive teaching: belonging, transparency, motivation, and scaffolding. We won't get deep dives on all of these, but it's worth saying that all the things that we want to do to make sure we are reaching everybody are really the things that everybody needs anyway. So we start today, the topic, right, first impressions. And I'm really doing a couple things as a student. I am trying to decide, do I fit in? Do I belong here? Does the teacher care about me? All of those things are going through my mind. So we know that believing that, and again, it's a perception, you don't actually have to care. It's a perception, or at least the way we measure it is do students perceive it. I had one professor who cared about me as a person. This was asked to 75,000 college graduates. In fact, they do this every year at Gallup. So this is being asked to graduates after 4 years of college. And so the question for you is, what percentage of students respond, yes, I strongly agree or agree? After 4 years, you would think everybody had found somebody, right? But the actual data is that only 27% of American college students at graduation say that one person cared about me as a person. So those who answered yes, by the way, not only are more likely to graduate on time, they live healthier lives. They're less likely to be divorced later in life. They were more engaged in their, all sorts of other good lifelong outcomes. And of course, most of us want to do this. So the question is, how? It's probably easier than you think, right? If you think about everything that you've done and everything that students still have this impression. So I underline the word demonstrate, right? Because we have to, it's not enough to care, right? Students have to feel that we care. And if you don't care, they don't care, right? They're going to cheat more, they're going to be lower motivation, et cetera. So a couple things you can do. One is, right, an introductory video before students even come into your class. And video works differently because it's you, it's your, it's even if it's just a little, TikTok type video. Hi, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. Yes, I have high standards. The class is hard, but I'm really hoping that you will succeed, and I will do everything I can to make sure everybody gets over the finish line. Something that shows you as a person, maybe something a little bit about the course. Maybe here's things that you will do, something that's motivational, some big picture sorts of things. Pre-class surveys, many of us do. But remember that the pre-class survey, the question, what do you know about my course, is really all about you. So the first question I recommend is, tell me something about yourself that I need to know. Or tell me something about what motivates you to do your best work, because we all like talking about ourselves. So asking in the first question, tell me something about you that would be useful for me to know. Tell me something about you, and then tell me something about me and what you know about my course. Obviously, learning names, using correct pronouns is useful. If you've got a big class, table tents work for this. But the easiest thing to do is to arrive a little bit early and stay a little bit late, right? If you have 500 students and you can't meet everybody or learn every name, what you can do is be seen to be greeting students at the door. Learn a couple of names. Okay, it's only a few names. Those students will feel better, obviously, but the other students see you making this extra effort. And it really is about, do I see you making the effort? Right at the end of class, say, I'll be in the hallway for a couple of minutes. If you've got a question, I know we've got to leave the room because the next person's coming in. Give me a few minutes to pack up, but I really do want to help. But continuing to say, I want to help. It seems easy. The data tells us, though, that we've got to say it probably every class, right? It only lasts for about an hour. The same is true for lots of things, by the way. The effect of, if you're on social media, you won't be paying attention as carefully and you're not going to do as well. We think, I can say that once a semester. No, it only lasts for about an hour. When there's difficulty, acknowledge it. Say, this is hard. I struggled with this. I hope you will keep going because it does take a few times to get this right. But those sorts of little things. Think about when you go to the gym. Think about how often that person says, come on, you can give me one more push-up. I know this is hard. Oh, pull-ups are hard. If it's too hard, do this. But you get it a lot. When I go to a 45-minute class, she says that at least 20 times, right? So we often have to say these things more often than we think. And then asking for early feedback, right? Again, it demonstrates that you care. Some sort of survey, anonymous survey, a poll maybe after the first day of class, maybe after 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks, that's starting to fade. That's a good time to hit this again. This is an easy one, right? Just as students come into class, set up a word cloud, Mentimeter does this. Tell me how you're feeling today. What's on your mind? And then students can see this. And you can maybe talk a bit about, oh, I see everybody's feeling overwhelmed. This is a really common feeling this time of the semester. If there's anything I can do to help, I'd love to try to do that for you. And then the last thing on this is just a little more evidence, right? So this is an amazing study, right? 360 college students, they were Canadian. They were asked to read an article about evolution, right? biology students, evolution, and half of the students were told this article is by a Nobel Prize winning scientist, somebody who really knows about DNA. And the other half were told it was by George Clooney. Which group of students do you think was more influenced by the article? I know you're going to be very sad to hear this, but of course it's George Clooney. And so we actually call this the George Clooney effect, because people feel like, oh, I know George Clooney. I trust him. He's right. I don't know this other guy, but I know George Clooney. You don't really, but you're a celebrity. And they tried it again with Hermione Granger, right? Fictional character. And still, right? Scientists, no, Hermione Granger. And this tells us something fundamental about influence, right? Think about when you're going to go buy a car, or you're going to have someone do your taxes, or you're just going to put solar panels on your roof. You look at the salesperson, right? You don't care how many degrees they have. Yeah, you want them to be an expert. That does matter. But what you really want to know is, can I trust them? Does this person have my best interest at heart? Yeah, they know a lot about cars or solar panels, but yeah, they just don't seem like a nice person, right? So we use this metaphor of the iceberg, right? That influence is about seeing deeper, right? Not just what I see on the surface, but what do I think are your real motivations, your real values? So the reason that the George Clooney effect exists is because students are making an evaluation, not about who's an expert. By the way, they know you're an expert. They're making an evaluation about who should they trust. And trust is fundamentally based upon values and motivation, right? Not if you know more about cars than I do. Yeah, you do. But do I trust you to sell me a car that I need because you're a good person? And that's exactly what happens in the class, that students are making and again, they're not even aware of this, right? You're doing this in the background, right? It's who do I trust? So the most important thing to establish at the beginning of the semester is that students should trust you, that you have their best interest at heart, that you care, right? That they belong in your classroom, that you know they belong, and that you care about their success, and that you're going to try everything you can to get them over the hump. So that's really the first thing you're trying to do, is create a sense of belonging, a relationship, trust. And with there, Brad, we can take some questions. I haven't looked at the Q&A, but I'm sure there are some over there.
Yeah, Jose.
I see a question.
A question about, if I'm fully online, how do I arrive early and stay late? So could you talk a little bit about how what you've just said applies to different modalities? Absolutely.
So let's say you're teaching synchronously, right? If you're teaching synchronously you're on Zoom, you say, okay, I'll be online a few minutes early. I'll get off a few minutes. If you're teaching asynchronously, then it's really about creating some space where you're not just, here is information, which might mean that you set up a chat. And that you say, hey, so, before our next assignment, I'd like to know if everybody, who has a pet, who has, something, tell me something you're feeling. An anonymous poll can be a way to do that. I'm like, it's the second week into the semester. How are you feeling? Right. And again, I showed the word cloud, but you need to create some space. And so if it's asynchronous, then you need to, create those sorts of things. I will say that even if you're teaching 100% asynchronously, it's useful to have some time when you say, I'm going to be here as a human, I'll be online. And again, you got to think different time zones. I'll do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. I do teaching in Australia, and the time zone, but it makes some sense to say, this is optional, but I would love to be here because I want to support you. Even for the students who don't sign on and look at your face, the fact is you made the offer, and that's what matters. And so again, since this is about perception, and again, think about the things that you do during an interview. We all think, the way he looked cross-eyed at that, or I didn't like his smile there. It's all of those dumb stuff, and we call this bias, right? Oh, I don't his shoes. I was actually on my first search committee, and I had to listen to a discussion about, wow, did you see those fancy Italian shoes? It's like, that doesn't have any bearing on this. But that's how humans work, right? That those little, so what are the little gestures that you can do that will show that you care? And so I would, do some of those, even if it's asynchronous.
Wonderful.
Yeah, no, the thing about having music on, all that makes a difference too. Revealing yourself, it lets everybody show their pets. Those sorts of things work. Other questions?
Jose, just maybe one more question before we move forward here. If I'm new to this, if this is a stretch for me, what signals can I look for that I'm doing it right, that I'm actually succeeding in gaining trust, that I'm doing the right sorts of things, or that I need to keep working on this? Is there some data or evidence that I can capture?
Well, the evidence is pretty overwhelming that it's a student perception, right? So the best thing to do is to ask for student perception. So again, word clouds, anonymous polls, how am I doing? Again, just the very act that you're asking for feedback. But another thing, ask a specific question. What else could I do to help you succeed? That's a good question. You could ask that anonymously. You can ask it in chat if you're on Zoom. You could use index cards if you're in class, right? I mean, these little magic guys, they really are. I use it to take attendance sometimes, right? I have a lot of people, but again, think about it. I have 100 students, and I still say, fill out an index card, and I'd like, put your name on it so I know, that you were here. But then I'd like to see two things. One is, what's one question you still have at the end of class? What is one other thing that I could do to help your success? Right? All of those things. And then the next time, make sure that you say, thank you for taking the time to do the index cards. I read them, and there were a lot of questions about this. So I'm going to go back and try to make sure we talk about this. Again, what people are seeing is that you actually spent the time to look at the index card and that you respond. So students want to know that you pay attention. Twitter also works if we're still on Twitter. A hashtag for my course. I often appoint a student. I say, so you're sitting in the front row. So guess what? I need you to monitor this Twitter feed, hashtag my course. And if somebody has a question, stop me, because now I know that it's not just, because think about how hard it is to raise your hand in class. It's like, hi, everybody, I'm stupid. I mean, right? It really does. Socially, it's very, very hard. And so, is there another mechanism? And so now I've appointed you as the watchdog. And so you say, oh, somebody has a question. You don't tell me who. Right, but it allows other people away. Back channels are another way to do this, right? If you're back face to face, Top Hat has this feature, but again, I just mentioned Twitter, lots of these, but some other way other than raising your hand to answer questions is another way, both to get feedback, but also just to show that you care.
Wonderful. All right, let's keep going.
Okay, so we should be sure. Okay, let's push to the next thing. So another related idea is transparency, right? Which is, remember, you're a faculty member, you're weird, right? You like school so much, you're still here. And so things are obvious for you. Why am I doing? Students always say, "Oh, why'd you assign us so much busy work?" It's like, that's not busy work. That's essential work, right? I teach music, right? And so I'm getting this question, by the way, a lot with AI, because like calculators, it's like, oh, my calculator can do that. Well, AI can just do that. So students, right, are very sensitive to this idea that you're just assigning me this busy work. So I would make students do timed tests about, what's a G major chord? What's a C minor chord? And they would go, I could just look it up. It's like, yeah, you can, but by that time the tune is over. Right, you don't have time to pull out your phone and go, what is C? Right, you need to have this boom, boom, boom. So I would explain to students, what is the connection between this skill I'm asking you to do and how you're going to use it, right? Again, back to the gym, right? You know that watching someone else do push-ups isn't that useful. You know that only the person who does the work gets the benefit. And so at the gym, it's pretty obvious, right? That if I don't have any discomfort, I'm not going to get this benefit. But your syllabus is not nearly that obvious, right? So what we want to do is, can we make our syllabus more transparent? So one thing to do is to make the big problem clear, right? That's motivate. What are we trying to do? Why is this important? Why is this? So first day, a really good thing to do is not pass out a syllabus, because if you pass it out, first of all, you're using all that paper, and students want it on their phone anyway, and then they're going to look for the last page where the assignments and the due dates are. So what I do on the first day of class is I say the syllabus will be available online in an hour. That makes you have to go to my website. So if I'm using, some sort of LMS, or I have a website for the course, whatever it is, it forces students to actually go there at least once, because that's where they're going to get the syllabus, right? And I literally hide it until the end of course, because I don't want you to do it right. Otherwise, they'll multitask now. So first day of class needs to be who am I? Who are you? Relationship, trust, something fun that shows I care. And then number two, it has to be, why does this class matter? So you need a great activity for the first day, right? You want students to leave the class buzzing, going, hey, this is going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be relevant, right? So what kind of activity can I do? So what's a big question? So often you compare these two things. So one is, I'm going to do something about, my course is about nutrition or something. Okay, I'm dealing with biology. Well, let's talk about what everybody eats for lunch. Let's talk about what's your favorite thing to eat for lunch as a kid, right? Let me ask you about you, because you like talking about you. But then I have to connect that, my interest in you, to the big problem of the course. That's a great thing to do on the first day. The other thing on the first day or the first week and in your syllabus is to make the details clear. So we learned during COVID that, again, what we thought was obvious was not. One of the big complaints from COVID is they couldn't find course materials. But I put everything in the LMS. Yeah, but how did you organize it, right? Navigation, you can see that statistic on the screen, right? That 1 in 4 of our students had difficulty navigating. And I think, yeah, maybe they're not quite as digitally savvy as we thought. Yeah, or maybe we're not as clear as we thought, or maybe they weren't as motivated as we thought, right? This happens to me all the time when I'm looking for information on university websites about admissions to help somebody, and I have to dig, and I know where to look, and they don't. So one of the things I do, for example, is I double index things, right? So for example, here are the information on the course that's chronological. So here are the videos, here are the handouts, here are the assignments, right? That makes sense to me. But then I think, well, how else might a student look for that? Oh, that really cute cat video you played in week 3, or that demonstration of this, experiment in week 4. It's in week 4, and the student has forgotten which week it was in. Okay, I'll give you a weird example. So I won't give away the ending of the TV show Endeavor, right? But we watched season 9 last week, and it was like, wait a second, when did that thing happen when Morse went to prison? And I thought, oh, maybe it was season 5, maybe it was season 6, and I couldn't find it. So I ended up Googling it. It was season 2. It was season 2. I had no idea how long ago that big event had been in this TV show I'm watching, right? So I realized that I have to index things by topic or some other way, right? So, here are the videos. Here's the video about this. Here's the video about that. So I put the stuff up once, but I double index. So that may seem like a little more work. Maybe students do this. Maybe you let students, what's the metadata, right? How do I tag this YouTube video? Set up a wiki page, let students, but some other way other than just the syllabus, the date of stuff, because that's not clear. But you need easy organization for what is required. Where is the stuff? I do recommend, open educational resource, OER, things like textbooks. Not everybody has a textbook. Are there free resources that I can get? Because we know that when you require a textbook, no matter how good the textbook is, the poorest students can't buy it right away. They don't have access right away. And then, what are the rules, right? Is that we're used to classes. We live here. This is our happy place. So it seems obvious to us what plagiarism is, what cheating is, what when we should ask AI, when we should not. But the rules are clear to us. But what our classrooms really look like an 80s aerobics class to students. It's like, why are you dressed that way? Why do I do this? All of the sorts of stuff that it's not clear. So I would be overly careful in terms of, oh, How do you get to office hours? What's my late policy? Why is it that way? This is an interesting, right, data on office hours, right? We think, well, you should come to office hours. The dark blue are why we think you should come to office hours, and the light blue are why students think they should go to office hours. So the good news is content clarification makes both lists, but students think office hours are for homework help, listening to others, or test prep, right? And we tend to think, there's just time together. They don't see that, right? Professional support, study skills, right? So these are things that you think. So the question is, can you say them out loud and make them more obvious to students? Can you let them know what else office hours are for? So I recommend that you have not just office hours, but an e-communication policy, whether you teach online or face-to-face. How do I contact you, right? Do you do social media? Do you not? When are you online? This seems trivial, but it's really important. When can I get you? And then during those other times, how fast do you respond, right? Say, look, I respond really fast Monday through Friday morning. I don't respond on the weekends. I say that over and over again because then the students know, okay, I'm not available on the weekend. Or you know what? I'm available on Sunday afternoon. I will get on for a couple hours. So if you need something before Monday, I will get on tonight. Students really appreciate late night hours and a little bit of weekend time. But what format's that going to be? Where are you going to be? Is it on the course? Is it an asynchronous course? Will you respond? But letting me know clearly, when are you going to respond? How do I get an appointment? How do I get in contact with you? Do I need a calendar? Is there a admin I have to go through? Do you do it yourself? And then look at this, right? This is information on career counseling for veterans. And they sent an email and nobody clicked, right? Or a few people clicked. And they changed one word, right, in the test group. From you are eligible for career services to you have earned. And it dramatically increases the number of people who click through. So think about how you frame office hours, maybe even the word, right? Student support time. Why am I doing this? Maybe an example. Why would you come to my student support hour, right? And then on your syllabus, right? So you do need to be clear, but I want to also say that, right? So the first page of your syllabus should have an essentials, your contact information, when the course meets, sure, fine. And maybe a one sentence about what whatever the course title is, et cetera. But then the rationale. Notice this comes before your learning goals and becomes before the other info, right? How does this course, why does it exist? How will it further my goals? But something exciting about why the course is there. Then you can have learning goals, right? Another way to think about learning goals is the benefits, right? What am I going to get? And then your information, right? So yes, I believe in transparency, but I also want to make sure that rationale comes first. Right? Many of you have a campus syllabus template. That's good, and it has like policies and things that you probably the religious observance policy, et cetera, stuff you have to have. But this order that I put here is the order I would use because it is the most motivational for student. Remember, like my first impression of you, my first impression of the syllabus is also symbolic, right? So what you're wearing, how you talk to me, all those things sort of matter. And one other thing before I stop here, which is that your syllabus also is a scaffolding document, right? So scaffolding we know is important, which is, right, what's the sequence? How am I going to learn things? And one thing we learned from COVID is that students want both structure and flexibility. In other words, there are no deadlines, turn stuff in wherever you can. It's just going to make people crazy. Lots and lots and lots of everything is put up into 10 pieces, right? Students also go crazy. That increases anxiety too. So what you want to think about is how many deadlines do I have, right? You probably don't want 100, but you also don't want, 2. So you probably want deadlines once a week, once every other week. So you do want things in pieces, but just not too many. But you also want flexibility. So the question is, how can you do both of these things? And even, right, why? Well, the reason why is because academic environments are not like work. I love this. Somebody invented this term. Procrastination-friendly environment. So it turns out that I do corporate work as well, and that's much less set up for this. You have much more free time in college. You have much more latitude with deadlines, right? And so on the one hand, we want to have some flexibility, but be aware that academics is more procrastination friendly, right? Students do procrastinate. So how do you reduce this? One, talk about why, rationale, motivation. The other is provide a reflection opportunity. I'll talk a little bit about those, but a wrapper. So what did you do well? How could you do better? Those sorts of things. I like asking students in advance, how are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? Put time into your phone, right? Schedule it now. If you think it's going to take 3 hours, put 3 1-hour blocks, right? And then more deadlines, smaller deadlines, although again, you can't overdo that. A big one is required attendance, right? So you're teaching synchronously or you have face-to-face classes. Students, required attendance does seem to improve student grades. Surprise, you're not. But students also want flexibility. So I thank Carol Holstead for this suggestion in the Chronicle. I find this also works. That class attendance is required. You get 3 free passes, right? So you can use those 3 free passes to skip class whenever you like. All you have to do is say, I'm using one of my free get out of jail cards, my free, that gives you a little flexibility. I do understand life intervenes, but if you don't come to class, things aren't, and so I do make attendance. I didn't used to, but this is post-COVID me. I didn't used to because I don't want to be your mother. But since it does matter and it does help, it's a little bit of a push, but also some flexibility that if you miss it, you miss it. This is also post-COVID data. What are the things that students most want us to do, or what things that they say would most help them? And flexibility about deadlines is number 1, right? Experimenting with other teaching is different, number 2, right? And being flexible about attendance or participation is number 3. So they want flexibility and they want structure, not just too much. So that's a conundrum, right? But so they don't want too much structure, not too many little deadlines. But so they want to be forced to do things, but with some flexibility. So again, I go to exercise class because once I'm there, I'm not going to leave early, right? If I started on my video, it's like I'll do 15 minutes and then, oh, look, there's a bird. Oh, look, I forgot to feed up that. I forgot to water that plant, and I'm off doing something else, right? So we want to provide a little more structure. But while I'm in class, the teacher might say, if you need water, stop and take water. And I say, oh, that's nice. Okay, that's a lot. But again, I'm looking for questions here. So 2 things we really for questions. One is, right, your syllabus is a symbolic document. And we are trying with both with the syllabus and with our policies within it to create both a sense of structure, because that's helpful, but also flexibility because that shows that I care. Yeah, and so if you tell students, you have an assignment is due Wednesday, but it'll be accepted. That's another. I like that one too. The other thing is, again, you can give people. You can have 1 assignment late. You can have 2 assignments late. And again, bosses do this too. I talk a lot. Again, I've been helped by this by working with some big corporations. It's like, look, there are some deadlines that are inflexible. If you're working for a newspaper and the thing goes to print at 5 o'clock, you cannot be late. You got to know that's a hard deadline. Other deadlines, like, I need to have your draft for the story. I need to know what you want to write about next week. You might get an extra hour. If you're on time all the time and you're an hour late once, I might forgive you. If you play drums in my band and you're a little bit late and you've never been late before and it doesn't mess up the wedding, that's probably okay. You were late for a gig when I have promised to do somebody's wedding. I am never going to hire you again. Partly because, right, they can sue me for a whole new wedding, not just the price of the band, right? So, so I explain to students that there are these different circumstances, and then I might give, deadlines and say, so these are yellow deadlines, these are red deadlines. This one's an absolute. The end of when the term ends and I've got to hand in stuff, you want to graduate, that's a big one. Okay, so I've got a great question here about required group projects. So group projects, so I do group projects with my corporate clients too. And you know what? It's no different. I spend a whole day, well, I spend a whole session, actually 2 this year, I have a group project with one of my groups. So I put them into groups, but I put them into groups, then we talk about group work. We say, okay, you've got to go around the group. You've got to talk about your strengths and weaknesses. You've got to get to know each other. You've got to decide a time to meet. You cannot leave the classroom until you've decided a time to meet. You can't, there are some things that you have to have done. You have to figure out, you're going to work on Google Docs, or you're going to work on Teams. What is your mechanism going to be? You've got to decide something in advance. And then the next time we meet, I say, okay, I'm going to give you 15 minutes of this class time where I want you to get into your groups, and here's something I want you to do. You need to come up with it. So I structure the group work. So Elizabeth Barclay has a great book on group work, what's it called? Collaborative learning techniques. So if you're going to do group work, to me, it's not about how big the class is. Students hate group work for the same reason that everybody hates group work right? Because it's harder. It's you got to manage other people. But it's also the norm. So if you're going to do group work, you've got to highly structure it, right? You've got to think about what is the right group project. You've got to help students understand, well, group work is harder, but better, right? Diverse groups do better work, and they take longer, right? This will take longer, and I give them examples from the real world, from lots of experiments about things, to show how that actually works, and why questioning assumptions is useful. But it also slows down the process. So group work can be good, but I don't think it increases motivation. I think it probably decreases it, but it does have other things that it does. And great, there's great suggestions in the chat. Other questions?
Jose, I've always struggled with the required attendance policy, but I think the data is overwhelming, particularly from an equity lens. It does, though, raise the premium on making that classroom valuable time. So making sure that you're acquiring them for something that is valuable to them. Can you say a little bit about how you can make that connection and what you've done to kind of make sure, or what you might recommend to make sure that time is valuable?
So actually, I'm going to say two things. About that. Saying it's a great question. So the first is that, right, there is an equity issue here. Right, if student A is working 3 jobs to make ends meet, and student B doesn't have to, right, it's going to be harder for student A to make it to class. So I say those things in advance. I say, look, I require class because it is going to improve your chances of success. But I also understand that life intervenes. So here is my problem. Again, give an example. I am going to be understanding, if I believe, right, this is a trust thing. If you're giving it your best effort, if this doesn't happen all the time, and if it does start to happen, I'm going to reach out to you. That's the moment when you need to respond to my email and say, yeah, I am struggling and you can help. Not, oh, well, you said attendance is required and therefore, right? So you need to manage the structure with the relationship part. But yeah, the biggest one is students will go to class if class has value. If I show up to class and all you do is read the textbook that I just read, then trust has gone to 0. It's Elizabeth Barclay for that collaborative techniques in the chat. Yes, there's actually other authors too, but she's the one I remember, Barclay. So that means that class needs to be interactive. So if students are up out of their chairs, if they're talking to each other, if they're doing stuff, if they're applying material, they're doing problems, all of that active learning, all of that engagement is going to make the barrier for them I get something else out of it. So it's a great question to ask students after week 2. Tell me what you get out of class. How can I make class more engaging? What are things that you would like me to do in class that I'm not doing? All of those sorts of questions. But if you just repeat, if you just lecture, you've also, there's the students aren't prepared for class thing. Don't summarize, because the minute you do that, you've rewarded the people who didn't prepare for class. So you have to say, look, I understand not everybody's going to get prepared every time life happens, but I can't the value of the time that people who did the work has really matters. It's just like when you go get a job and you come to a meeting and you're unprepared. Don't expect the boss to summarize, because then the people who really did prepare feel like, this sucks, I'm never going to do that again, right? So if people aren't prepared, you need to either do something else that day. Actually, the one that really works the best is just sitting in your chair and looking and saying, so I said we were going to have a discussion today. Let's discuss. And if you sit there and look at them for 50 minutes, I guarantee you'll never have to do this again, right? So I don't recommend, walking out and slamming the door or summarizing. You probably don't need to wait the whole 50 minutes, but wait 10 minutes. Wait way longer than you think. By the way, when you ask for a question in class and you think you've waited 5 minutes, you've probably waited 5 seconds, right? Because your perception of how long you waited. So one thing I do is I ask a question and I walk to the other side of the room and then I walk back and I don't say anything. Because often people are thinking and it takes them time. And so giving people more chance to start a discussion like that. Another way to get discussions go, make them smaller, right? Have people do, think, pair, share, write something individually, talk with 2 people, those all work. And so I was see something in the questions about flipped. So I'm a big advocate, obviously, for flipped classrooms, but it's also okay to do 5 and 10 minute mini lectures, right? You don't have to not say anything in class, because remember that you think of lectures more like a sermon, right? It's not a separate. It's not a right. It doesn't say, oh, you don't have to do the reading, right? But sermons can be inspiring. They can be, I'm gonna have some new insight, right? You still need to read the book or watch the movie, but I'm going to give you my evaluation, my top 10, my here's what I really think is different. And so you can inspire with a brief lecture. You just don't want to talk for 50 minutes. Other questions? I see I've got, is there anything else in chat, Brad?
I don't think so. I think maybe we can move forward here.
Great. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, I mentioned motivation. There's my guy doing push-ups. So human motivation really relies on 3 things. The first, not surprised, is relevance, right? Is this worthwhile or meaningful? And so the picture of the cathedral is here because I want to remind you to tell your cathedral story, right? So the experimental data here is really clear. If I say, carry these rocks up the hill, and I tell the other group, carry these rocks up the hill so that we can build a cathedral for your great-grandchildren. So assuming that cathedrals are meaningful and important for you, that group does a much better job. They're more careful. They do it right. Everything matters more because they can see, even though it's not in their lifetime, right? That knowing that what they're doing has meaning. There's research about, if I tell you find the cells versus find the cancer cells, right? Just changing a word or two, adding something that's meaningful, people will spend more time, they're more engaged. So how is this going to benefit me, right? Make it clear what this is going to do for me. So in every assignment, I put a little bit of one sentence. This is going to help you do X when you start to see patients, when you start to get a job, whatever it is. The second part of motivation is attentions, right? Do I continue to stay engaged? And so this has more to do with competence, right? If I'm really good at something, I'm more likely to keep going. If I'm terrible at it, I stop. If something is too hard, or at least I perceive it's too hard, right? The rock is so big, it doesn't matter how much of a cathedral I'm going to build. The rock is too big. Right? And if the rock is too small, that's equally frustrating, right? So video game people call this pleasantly frustrating, right? So the idea is, do I have optimal challenge? So in a video game, by the way, right, people, if the video game is too easy for you, it gets harder only for you. If it's too hard, it gets easier only for, it adjusts immediately to everybody. So a couple ways of keeping my attention. One is variety, right? That not having to do the same thing, 50 times, mix things up. But the other is optimism, right? That if you keep telling me you can do it, you can give me one more. Back to the gym, right? I go to a class where we do 100 sit-ups, but they don't just say, okay, 100. Actually, it's not true. I went one time. The teacher was like, okay, let's just do the 100 sit-ups and get it over with. And it's like 99, 90. It's like, that was really demotivating. What almost everybody else does is, let's do 10. Let's do 10 more. Let's do 10 more. Great. Let's take a break. Right. Let's change the position slightly. You can do 5 more. Let's get to 35. Right. They break it up, and then like just one more. And then I've done it, and I feel a sense of accomplishment. And so that sense that you can do it has to be said a lot. But optimism is also about your structure, right? So, okay, not write a 30-page research paper, but let's come up with a topic. Let's come up with 5 key sources that you can do. And then we'll do the other bit. So optimism is partly about belief and relationships, but it's also about how you structure and how you divide things up. The last part of motivation, so is autonomy, or my sense of agency, that I have some say in this, right? That this is going to matter, that my contribution will mean something. And so the way I summarize this, right? So the psychologist would say engagement, optimism, agency, right? If all your students look like this, your job would be easy, right? That you can see that combination of 3 things. And so the way I like to think about it is I care, I can, I matter, right? That is, if I can bring my students to that place, my job is done, right? So I have to first make sure that you care, right? That you think this is important. Second, that you believe that you can do it, right? That it's optimism, you're capable. And then third, that it matters, that if you contribute in class, it will change somebody's minds. It's important, right? That your contribution is important, not just that the topic is important. So ultimately, I think you can summarize a lot of teaching as I care, I can, I matter, or at least that's the emotional state. Notice it's an emotional state, right? If I can get you in that state, then you're more likely to do the work, right? You are more motivated. I have to worry less about cheating, right? I don't have to worry about AI so much, right? Because I've done those 3 things. The other analogy I like to think of is this tennis net, right? That when we do assignments and assessment, what we're really trying to do is provide feedback, right? And the best teacher in the world is the tennis net. In other words, you can learn tennis without a coach. You don't need a teacher to teach you tennis. I mean, it helps, nice, but you cannot learn tennis without a net, because the net tells you it's working, it's not working. You know, Brad asked me earlier, how do I know that students think I care, right? You need some sort of assessment. You need some sort of net. Yes or no? Is it going over? Is it not going over? And so you want to be the tennis net, right? And you want to think about, how do I design my course so there's a tennis net, so students are getting that feedback to know this is working, no, it's not working, right? So how does a tennis net work? Well, it does 3 things. One is it's objective, right? Trust. I can yell at the tennis net, but ultimately, I trust the tennis net. It's given me real feedback. Yeah, okay. The ball didn't go over the net. Oh, you moved the tennis net. No, right. So it's trustworthy. It's objective. Secondly, I know what to do, right? It's specific. I have to hit the ball in a slightly different way to get it to go. I'm trying to get the ball over the net. And then it's timely, right? It's immediate. The tennis net tells me immediately and in small chunks, that shot didn't work, right? Absolutely, yes, no, that shot did not work. So can we repeat this and think about all of the assignments that we give students and all of our feedback and all of our assessment? Can they be, are they trustworthy, right? Do students believe this is objective? Are they specific and actionable, right? Do I know what to do to fix it? And are they timely? In other words, the speed with which you return assignments does matter. If I get it back 3 weeks later, it's like I've totally forgotten. So much better to get it in small chunks. The other thing about it is that feedback, right? It is useless to give somebody, here are 3 ways you could make your essay better. Because humans can only do one thing at a time when it comes to improvement, right? So it's much better to save your red ink, save all of those, you've spent all that hours doing. Here is one thing you can do to make your essay better next time. Here is what I'd like you to do. Then the next time they give you an essay, you need to keep track of, aha, you did this thing. Now there's another thing you can do. Here's the next thing to do. And again, think about how tennis lessons work, right? Let's work just on the forehand today. We don't start with, let's do everything. We're going to do serve, backhand. No, you start with one stroke. Let's do just the backhand today. And then after you've gotten pretty good at that, what do? Well, I'm going to throw in one forehand shot every 10 to make you have to get reset, right? So, oh, okay. So a lot of teaching is about how do we structure this, right? But it's going to save you time, right? Not 3 things to improve. Here is the next thing I want. That's all I need to know. What is the next thing? I'm going to hit the ball again. So, right, often I say, stop coaching me. Right? Yes, I know the ball went into. I can see the ball went into the net. Just give me another box of balls, right? Give me a thing of balls. Let me hit the ball again and shut up, teacher, right? And if you are going to hit something, one thing to do: think about your feet. Got it. Hold the racket tighter. Got it. Right? Not, swing your hips, move your arms, eye on the ball. Right? Too much. Right? Just keep looking at the ball. One thing. It also makes your teaching easier because it means it's the only thing I have to, I don't have to write quite as much. I can give you what's the next thing to work on to help get the ball over the net? So I'm going to do a lot more about this if you come in October or in San Diego. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to spend a whole workshop on this. And actually, we're going to talk a little bit about AI in connection with this. But think about how what we've done today, right, should map onto all of your assignments, right? So every assignment should have a purpose, right? That's the I care part, right? Why should I care about this? What is it? What's the benefit going to be? Show me that push-ups are going to give me bigger muscles, or I'm going to get, whatever. Then how, right? How do I do this? Well, I can. So I need clarity. I need to know exactly what to do. I probably need to know when to do it. And by when, I also put spacing there, because do I do it all at once? Do I do it in pieces, right? Do I do this first and then that? Can I do it all the night before? Students often want to cram things together. So I spend a lot of time reminding students, you need to do this assignment in 3 bits, right? You need to do something on Monday. You need to read the chapter, try a couple of problems, then go play basketball, then come back later that night and try the same problems again, right? Or go back and look at the chapter and think, what do I still not understand, right? I help them space out what they're going to do things. And then a checklist, right? So here are 5 parts of this. Here's what you do. So, but the how, right? And then the target, right? How do I know I hit the target? What's the tennis net, right? What target am I trying to hit? This is part of the I matter thing, right? So is there a rubric? What does good look like? And good might be, an example, right? What is a relevant example? This is how I would use this. This is what good looks like. So your assignments need to address all 3 of these things, right? Why should I do this? How do I do this? And what target am I trying to hit? And that corresponds to those 3 elements of motivation. So I talked about belonging, transparency, motivation, scaffolding. So first impressions, right? So again, first impressions are about demonstrating caring. It's the demonstrate part that matters, because I know that you care, right? So do I need to do something before the first day, right? Send out something in advance. It could just be an email. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in class. The syllabus won't be available, but I have put the information like textbooks or whatever into this email. I look forward to seeing you on class, right? Your tone does matter, right? Remember that framing you have earned, framing tone matters. The syllabus is a symbolic document. So what goes early on in the syllabus matters, but also the clarity, right? Do I get a sense reading your syllabus that you care, the language choice? And then your first day of class, learn a couple of names, one good joke. Yeah, if you're not funny, don't tell the joke. Just talk about yourself as a human being, right? And then we've talked a lot about structure plus flexibility. It's not one or the other, it's both, right? We really have to try to do both. And then motivation is I care, I can, I matter. And scaffolding, right? Thinking about assignments and assessments all as feedback. If you can be like the tennis net and do those 3 things, objective, specific, and timely. Oh boy, okay, that's a lot. So I should probably stop there. But the last thing I'll say is that, right, I've used this metaphor of the gym. Think of yourself as a cognitive coach, right? Yes, you're a content creator. Yes, you can profess. Yes, you're a designer of experience. But mostly what coaches do is they think, what do I do first? What do I do next? How big a chunk? What do I say when you get frustrated? That's what my fitness coach does. And so that's what a cognitive coach does. Okay. Questions, thoughts, complaints?
So Jose, there's a wealth of information you've shared with us. One question from Rebecca is, if I have to make very, limited choices because of time, what is one or two, like what would you recommend is the most important thing, or the most important two things to focus on getting that ball over the net for the students this fall?
So the next thing everybody should do, right? The number one thing is think about relationships and belonging, right? Think about motivation, right? Instead of thinking I need to figure out how to get them to stop cheating, I need to whatever, right? So trust, right? Spend a little bit more time at the beginning of class, not jumping into your content, right? Think about, do I need to do an exercise? Do I need to do table tense? Do I need to get to class earlier? Do I need to change the language around office hours and what I call office hours? But can I send out something in advance? Is there one thing I can do to create more trust, more relationships? And I would actually say that that's the thing you want to come back to, right? Because students will actually forgive a lot of stuff if they trust you, right? Think about it. You're buying a car and you really trust the guy, and he comes back and he's made a math mistake and he's going to charge you more. If I believe that it's a real mistake, I'm okay. If I think, oh, I never trusted this guy, right? Then I'm like, I'm out of there, right? I'm done. So you will trust people when they make mistakes if you say, you made the effort. So again, asking for feedback a lot, any one of these things. So I would do one thing a week, spend 3 minutes, do a word cloud 1 week, do index cards the next week, do an online, survey. What one other thing could I do to help you? Stay after class, learn a few more names, right? Take any one of those things and just try one a week. Take your list that you've just made, you just scribbled, and say, okay, I can't forget about this. Week 3, I'm going to do one more thing. But those are the easiest things to do, and they change students' impression of you. Oh God, thanks, Linda. So the truth is, Linda's question. The question is, do you ever feel like being tempted to be the sage on the stage? And the truth is, my daughter once said to me, "Dad, real people don't talk for 50 minutes without breathing using footnotes." Because it's like, yeah, this is the mode I do. You lecture too much. Yeah, of course I do. It's what and so so that's easy. So I think just remembering that my tendency, like a lot of us, is to just keep talking. And so are there ways to get me to stop talking? I have a little index card, maybe it says stop talking, or a slide that like these slides that came with the questions on them, right? I insert those slides. That makes me stop talking. But again, a little bit, if when I'm talking and I'm trying to be inspirational, that works. But most of us talk too much. And so remembering that your talking is mostly gratifying to you and your ego. That listening to somebody else talk is good for inspiration, but it's not actually, there's not much content being transferred. I have to do stuff. Again, it's like learning tennis, right? Nobody learns tennis reading a book. I have to do the thing. And so what can they do? So I make sure that they do something in every class.
Well, thank you, Jose. Everyone, please join me. I'm already seeing a lot of gratitude in the chat, but please join me for thanking Jose for another extraordinary hour of sharing so many great insights with all of us. There really is no more important time to focus on the process and the experience of learning for our students. We have just scratched the surface, and it's clear that Jose has so much to offer. I encourage you to pick up one or all of these books that he has written to share his wisdom with us. I think it's truly phenomenal. And again, Jose, thank you, and it's great to see you again. I would also encourage you to learn more about how you can create formative, low-stakes assignments, and engage your students in many of the ways Jose has mentioned today. You'll see the poll emerging now. Top Hat really is a platform designed to do this with your students. So let us know if you're interested, and we'd be happy to help you out if you're new to Top Hat. To finish up our first day of summer camp, we're going to be sliding soon after the break into another session that really connects nicely to this one, which is to learn about the interactive syllabus and how you can apply some of the ideas Jose shared with us in designing and delivering your syllabus to your students. So thank you all again for joining us. I hope to see you back here at 3:15.